On May 6, 2026, the marble statue surrounding the Stadio Nicola Pietrangeli at the Foro Italico stood as silent witnesses to a shift in the tectonic plates of professional tennis. These statues, carved in the 1930s to represent the pinnacle of athletic stoicism, have seen nearly a century of champions come and go. But what they witnessed on this Wednesday afternoon wasn't just a match. It was a market correction. It was a moment where prestige of the world rankings collided head-on with the raw, unmanufactured gravity of a new kind of superstar. On one side of the grounds, the institutional machinery of the WTA was grinding its gears. Eala Sabalenka, the world number one, a four-time Grand Slam champion, and the undisputed titan of the modern era, walked into a press room on her 28th birthday and issued an ultimatum that sent shockwaves through the sports executive offices. She spoke of boycotts. She spoke of rights. She spoke of fundamental truth, that without the stars there is no show. But as her words were being transcribed and blasted across social media, the actual show was happening several hundred meters away, and it didn't look like anything the tournament directors had planned for. While the premier sessions featuring the world's most decorated names were struggling to move tickets at inflated prices, an unseeded 20-year-old ranked 42nd in the world had done the impossible. Eala had turned a 3,720-seat stadium into a fortress that was physically impossible to enter unless you had secured your spot weeks in advance. There were no tickets left, not a single one. This is the story of a Wednesday in Rome that the tennis world did not see coming, and it forces us to ask a question that threatens the very foundation of how sports are marketed. What happens when the world's best players realize they aren't necessarily the world's most valuable ones? The implications of this contrast go far beyond a single tournament in Italy. We are currently watching a live experiment in the value of human attention. For years, the logic of professional tennis has been simple. Win trophies, earn ranking points, and the audience will follow. You build the hierarchy, and the commercial success trickles down from the top. But the scene at the Foro Italico suggests that the hierarchy is breaking when a world number one is threatening to walk away because the money doesn't match the effort. While an unseeded player is creating a sellout frenzy that rivals a rock concert, the leverage in the room begins to shift. This is about the open loop of the WTA's future. Why is the most marketed session in Rome, featuring three of the biggest names in the history of the sport, fighting against a tide of empty seats and fan resentment, while a young woman from the Philippines, with zero promotional push in the tournament, is generating organic, diaspora-driven demand that no algorithm could have predicted. The stakes here are existential for sport. If the stars boycott, will the fans even notice if players like Eala are the ones actually filling the seats? We are entering an era where market behavior is beginning to decouple from sporting achievement, and the fallout from this Wednesday in Rome might just be the catalyst for a total reimagining of how players are paid, how tournaments are scheduled, and who truly hold the power in a stadium filled with 10,000 empty chairs. To understand how we reach this flashpoint, we have to look at the atmosphere leading into the 2026 Italian Open. Rome is a city that respects history, but it is also a city that has become increasingly frustrated with the modernization of its most beloved sporting events. In the weeks leading up to the tournament, the official communications were relentless. They were selling a dream. The big three of the women's game and the local Italian heroes all stacked on a single card. The tournament's own marketing machine listed Sabalenka, Coco Gauff, and Matteo Berrettini as the center court opener for Day 4. This wasn't just a schedule. It was a desperate attempt to move 10,500 seats at a premium price point. But the fans weren't buying the dream. Instead, they were flooding social media with accusations of killing the sport. Prices for premium sessions had spiked at the last minute, a move that Sportscaster described as a tournament having no shame whatsoever. This is the backdrop of the modern WTA 1000 event, a struggle to balance the massive overhead of these mini-slams with a fan base that feels increasingly priced out of their own passion. And it was against this backdrop that Eala Sabalenka decided to take her stand. Sabalenka is not a player who minces words. She is a powerhouse on the court and a realist off it. On her 28th birthday, at the peak of her powers, she sat in that press room and laid out a vision of a strike. "I think at some point we'll boycott it," she said. "Yeah, like that's going to be the only way to kind of like fight for our rights." Her argument was centered on the why factor of the entertainment industry. She sees herself and her peers as the primary drivers of value. In her mind, the tournament is merely a stage, and the players are the play. Without us, there wouldn't be a tournament, and it wouldn't be that entertainment, she insisted. And from a certain perspective, she is absolutely right. The physical toll of the tour, the constant travel, and the immense pressure maintaining a top 5 ranking deserve a level of compensation that matches the revenue these events generate. But Sabalenka's why was about to meet Eala's who, because while Sabalenka was arguing that the stars are the entertainment, the fans at the Pietrangeli were proving that they had a very different definition of who they were willing to pay to see. Eala's journey to that sold-out stadium in Rome did not start with a win. It started 9 days earlier in Madrid, with the kind of brutal, ego-bruising defeat that usually sends a young player into a spiral. She had faced Elise Mertens, a veteran who eats young players for breakfast on clay. The scoreline was a 2-6, 1-6 demolition. In the world of professional tennis, a loss like that follows you. It becomes a narrative. She's not ready. She can't handle the heavy hitters on the surface. But Eala didn't go quiet. She went to Rome. And she brought with her something that Sabalenka's 4 Grand Slams can't buy, an organic, global community that views her success as a collective victory. When Eala drew Magdalena Freck in the first round, a former top 25 player who specializes in making life difficult for aggressive hitters, nobody expected to sell out. Nobody except the people who understand the power of the Philippine diaspora. The scene at the Stadio Nicola Pietrangeli was unlike anything the Italian Open had seen in years. This isn't just a tennis court. It's an architectural marvel. It's the most photographed venue in the sport, ringed by those towering marble figures. It's usually reserved for the vibe of the tournament, the place where casual fans go to soak in the Roman sun. But on May 6th, the vibe was replaced by a roar. The Philippine flag was draped over the marble railings. The chants of Alex, Alex, were so loud they echoed off the stone athletes in a way that felt almost sacrilegious to traditionalists. Diane Castillo, the legendary broadcaster from ABS-CBN, was there on the ground. She's seen it all. Pacquiao's rise, the basketball frenzies in Manila, the Olympic golds. Her dispatch that evening was just 4 words. Pinoy pride in Italia. In those 4 words, she captured the market anomaly that the WTA is currently failing to calculate. This wasn't a crowd of tennis fans who happened to be in Rome. These were fans who flew in from Manila, London, and Madrid specifically to be in that 3,720-seat building. They didn't care about the price spikes on center court, because they weren't going to center court. They were going to see Alex. The match itself was a micro-study in the grit that builds this kind of loyalty. Eala didn't just win. She performed a 3-act play. She took the first set 6-0. It was clinical. It was the kind of opening set that makes a crowd feel like they've made the smartest investment of their lives. But then the reality of the clay court set in. Freck, the veteran, adjusted. She broke Eala's rhythm, taking the second set 3-6. The momentum had shifted, and in the third set, Eala went down a break. This is the moment where the story usually ends for the unseeded 20-year-old. This is where the Madrid loss from 9 days earlier usually starts to weigh on the shoulders. But this is also where the why factor of the audience comes into play. The crowd didn't get quieter when she went down. They got louder. They weren't there for a dominant win. They were there for the fight. Eala broke back. She steadied her nerves. She served it out 6-4. It was her first ever victory at the Italian Open, but more importantly, it was a verification of her value. When she turned to the crowd, she didn't perform a choreographed celebration. She just offered a quiet, direct wave. She had earned the room, and she knew it. Now, let's play devil's advocate for a moment to build some professional credibility in this analysis. A skeptic would say, sure, Eala sold out a small court, but she's ranked 42nd. You can't build a global tour on a player who hasn't won a major. They would argue that Sabalenka is the one who carries the television contracts, the sponsorship deals, and the institutional prestige. They would say that Eala's crowd is a niche audience, a diaspora-driven anomaly that doesn't reflect the real tennis market. And, in a traditional sense, they would be right. Sabalenka represents the high watermark of athletic excellence. Her boycott threat carries weight because if the top 5 players in the world stop playing, the sporting integrity of the Grand Slams evaporates. But here is a counter argument. Sporting integrity doesn't pay the stadium's electricity bill. Ticket sales do. Merchandising does. Organic engagement does. The data from Rome speaks a language that tournament directors are starting to learn, even if they don't like the dialect. Your most promoted session, featuring 3 legends, needed every ounce of marketing budget to move tickets. An unseated 20-year-old filled a stadium alone, without a single promotional push. That is not a one-day anomaly. Madrid told the same story just weeks earlier. We are seeing a pattern where certain players, regardless of their seed, possess an audience gravity that is more reliable than the rankings themselves. Sabalenka's claim that, without us, there wouldn't be a tournament assumes that the us only refers to the champions. But what if the us that the fans actually care about includes the players who represent something larger than a trophy? What if the entertainment Sabalenka describes is being generated more effectively by the player on the marble court than the player in the press room? This brings us to the hidden motives of the players involved. Sabalenka isn't just asking for more money. She's fighting for the future of the WTA's business model. She knows that the prize money gap with the men's game is a glaring inequality that needs to be addressed. She is using her leverage as world number 1 to force a conversation that is long overdue. But the timing of her statement, delivered on the same day that Eala approved entertainment, is already alive and well on the side courts, creates a fascinating irony. Sabalenka is demanding more from the tournament because she believes she is the value. Meanwhile, the fans are showing that they define value differently. They are voting with their wallets for the narrative of the underdog, for the connection to their heritage, and for the sheer grit of a comeback win. The contrast we saw on May 6, 2026, is a portrait of 2 players relating to their audience in completely opposite ways. One demands a room, the other earns it. And as we look toward the future, this distinction becomes the most important metric in the sport. What happens 5 years from now because of this Wednesday in Rome? If the boycott actually happens, and the top-tier stars walk away from a Grand Slam, the vacuum will be filled. And it won't be filled by lesser players. It will be filled by the players who have already built their own independent kingdoms of fans. If Eala continues this trajectory, she won't need a seating to be the main attraction. She will be the reason the 10,500-seat stadium sells out, and she will be the one with the leverage. The long-term trajectory of professional tennis is moving toward a creator economy model. For decades, the tour was a platform and the players were the content. But now, players like Eala are becoming their own platforms. They carry their audience with them from Madrid to Rome to Paris. They don't need the tournament's marketing machine because their fans are the marketing machine. When Philippine sports media starts mobilizing travel packages for Roland Garros 2 weeks before the draw even drops, the power dynamic has already shifted. The tournament directors aren't the ones in control anymore. The diaspora is. And this is where the Sabalenka boycott threat gets complicated. If the established stars walk out, they might find that the door doesn't stay open for them. The audience might just move its gaze to the players who stayed, the players who fought to the third-set breakdowns on the marble courts, and the players who made them feel like they were part of the victory. My final thought for you to carry away from this deep dive is about the nature of power in sports. We often think of power as something that is handed down in the form of a trophy or a number 1 ranking. But true power is the ability to command a room or a stadium without asking for permission. Aryna Sabalenka is a phenomenal champion who has earned every bit of her status, and her fight for fair pay is a noble one. But Eala is proving that there is a different kind of status that isn't found in a trophy case. It's the status of being unmissable. On Wednesday in Rome, the world was busy counting the empty seats on center court, while fans of the Pietrangeli were showing us exactly where the future of the sport is headed. The entertainment wasn't missing. It had just moved to a different court. The French Open draw drops in 2 weeks. The conversation is only going to get louder from here. We are looking at a potential round 2 rematch for Eala against Wang Xinyu, the very player who ended her Rome campaign last year. If she wins that, and a center court path becomes a reality, we will see the ultimate test of this market theory. Can Eala fill 10,500 seats faster than the world number one? And if she does, what does that do to the WTA's bargaining power? This channel tracks every match, every ticket surge, and every press conference that accidentally makes its own point. If you follow the story this far, you aren't just a spectator. You're witnessing the restructuring of an entire industry. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss the next chapter of this reckoning. Because if Rome was the warning shot, Paris is going to be the explosion. Drop your prediction in the comments below. Is the era of the unseated superstar officially here? Or is Sabalenka's boycott the only way to save the sport's future? I'll see you in the next deep dive.